Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And today I want to talk about Shadowland because it's one of, if not my favorite game mode, and I think a lot of us have been asking for expansions of Shadowland for a long time now. But I had a conversation with my live stream recently about expanding Shadowland, and we kind of came to differing conclusions, and so I wanted to reiterate that conversation and expand on it now with you guys while I just casually run through some Shadowland gameplay here in order to continue the conversation, in order to make the conversation on a bigger platform, because, you know, there's a lot more here of you on YouTube than there are on Twitch, and also to get some more ideas for how we can really tackle this problem, because wanting more stages of Shadowland actually becomes a bit of a problem when you hear the opinions of all of the players. And you know, I can make a video where I just say, I want this, and that's what I want. Okay, bye guys. But I find that it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more valuable to have the conversation where I present both sides, or multiple sides if they exist, multiple sides, and then I get feedback from you guys on what you think works the best and what doesn't, and how it can change and how it can be better. So essentially what I want and what I think some players want, and possibly the majority of players, is more Shadowlands. Now currently Shadowlands functions on a once a week type event. It's different from almost all the other game content, and it has 30 stages. Now, there are definitely problems that exist with Shadowland currently. I think the biggest problem that the majority of players experience is that the rewards at higher stages do not match the difficulty, and I hear it a lot from veterans and even from players after only playing for about 6 months, which is kind of sad if you think about it. 6 months into the game and they're already skipping some of the content in the game, but they basically say that Shadowland is not worth the effort. And I can acknowledge, I don't necessarily agree, but I can definitely see what they're saying, that it's not worth it, because beyond stage 25, if you don't have those max level characters to just plow through the stage, if you actually have to try, the rewards are often so low and so dismal that it's really not worth it. So I think a conversation like that can be left for another video. I'm not saying that the rewards are good. They're bad, definitely. Shadowland definitely needs to have a revamp of the rewards from everything past stage 20. I think up to stage 20, the rewards are good. After that, there's a couple of exceptions when you get like 500,000 gold on one stage and you get 2 of the extreme ISO boosters on another stage. These bad boys are the 6-star ones. But besides that, all of the other rewards, especially from 25 to 30, are absolutely trash 90% of the time. And the other problem with the rewards is that they're RNG based. But that's not really what I want to get into. What I want to get into is the gameplay, the game mode, the actual content. And I think that's something that a lot of players want to see more of. But it's a bit difficult because in the current form, it's 30 stages, and you have 1 week to finish it. But apparently, for some players, that's almost asking too much. And so when I suggested flat out, let's bump it up to 40 stages, even 50 stages of Shadowland, a lot of players push back against that, and they say, you know, I don't have time to clear 50 stages in a week. And I thought that was interesting because on the one hand, maybe that's true, that's how they feel. On the other hand, you can honestly raise the question of, so what? And the question of so what essentially means that should the game take into consideration how much time you have to play every day, and should we limit game modes by how much time people want to spend playing them? And that's a really good question, because rather than improving the number of stages from 30 up to 40 or 50, would most players be happy if they just made it harder? So that is another possibility, the way of tackling the problem for everyone. If they said, for example, that you have to start using tier 2 characters at stage 16 or stage 15 instead of 25, and that you had to start using tier 3 characters at stage 25, that would make Shadowland a lot more difficult, but it wouldn't take more time necessarily, because there would be the same number of stages. Now that also has problems, because another one of the issues that I heard players complaining about was the rewards. And a lot of times players are worried that if a game mode gets stretched out, that the rewards will not be doubled, or the rewards won't stretch with the game mode taking more time. And so I found that kind of interesting, and I considered it something that, you know, it didn't cross my mind, but I guess it crossed other players' minds. But basically the way that you would tackle that, or the way that it would be solved, is just by improving the rewards. So that's kind of why I wanted to tackle the whole issue of the rewards not being good right now. I think that kind of encapsulates both the problem and the solution. A lot of players, or some players at least, worry about getting more Shadowland stages when they don't feel as though currently Shadowland is a rewarding experience. And I understand that, but I think if we can only have one, I think we should go for more stages rather than more, you know, just what we have currently, because we're not getting either at the moment. At least we can get one. And so, hoping that I've tackled the majority of the problems that people have with Shadowland being expanded, I wanted to present to you guys a kind of spin on the classic Shadowland expansion. So the one that I've covered already is one that just basically pushes Shadowlands up to more than 30 stages, 40 stages, 50 stages, so on and so forth. But I actually don't think that that is the best way of doing things. It is definitely a way of doing things, but I had another idea, and it was actually encouraged and probably inspired by someone on my live stream, and it's to basically have a different version of Shadowlands every day. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and essentially what it does is it doubles Shadowland. So you would still have the weekly Shadowland that I'm playing through right now, and this Shadowland would still have a weekly schedule. So this would remain unchanged. It would be 30 stages, and nothing would change, nothing would be added, nothing would be more difficult. But instead of that, what would happen is there would be a second Shadowland, kind of like the way that we have Alliance Battle and Alliance Battle Extreme, but they wouldn't be connected in the sense that you have to beat one to get to the other. They would just be two of them existing simultaneously, kind of like the epic quests, where you can play through multiple different epic quests on the same day, and you can play through multiple different stages from multiple different epic quests. And so what you could do essentially with multiple Shadowlands, with a daily and a weekly rotation of Shadowland, is you could rotate the rewards. And a really interesting way of considering this is to consider World Boss Invasion. So you can see here the rewards at the bottom of World Boss Invasion. You have ISO, Energy, Dimension Debris, ISO, Energy. So there's kind of a theme here. It's mostly Energy, ISO, and Dimension Debris. If you go to the other week, I don't think I can go to the other week, but when you have the other week with Odin and the kind of Asgardian stages, it's mostly gold that you get. You get gold and I think comic cards, so it's got different themes. So I thought, why not apply that idea to Shadowland? In this way, it would be easy for the devs, because they could just replicate the coding of Shadowland without having to create a whole new game mode. And then what they could do is, you know, they could have different days of Shadowland on this daily rotating schedule, and maybe only make it 10 stages instead of 30, or even 5 stages of Shadowland, just shorter, because, you know, doing 30 stages a day every day is obviously too much to ask for. I mean, personally, I would love that, but I have to be realistic. I think 30 stages every day plus another 30 stages for the week is definitely too hard. So I'm proposing a daily Shadowland added at 5 or 10 stages max. That would be my ideal. And what would happen in that sense is, for example, on the first day, you would have mostly, let's say, gold and gear up kits and dimension debris. Those would be the rewards for the first day, and for those 10 missions of Shadowland. And it would start off maybe at 50,000 gold, and it would work all the way up to, you know, 200,000 or 300,000 gold on stage 10. So you would get better rewards as you got further, but the rewards would generally follow a pattern. And so for those players that feel as though they don't want to have to do all of the content every single day in order to keep up, they could essentially skip certain days of this new Shadowland if they didn't need those resources. So, for example, I know some of you guys are going to get jealous, or you're going to hate me or whatever. I'm not trying to flex on you, but I have a lot of gear up kits. I got a shit ton. I got a lot of dimension debris. I don't need that anymore. So I could technically skip, and I might on certain weeks skip that day of Shadowland because I only really need the gold. But it opens up new opportunities for Netmarble to finally start giving us proper rewards, because it's obviously something that they struggle with, which is why I have to make so many videos pointing out how garbage the rewards are in pretty much every game mode. Alliance Conquest, Alliance Raid, sometimes World Boss Invasion, when you get garbage chests time after time. Extreme Alliance Battle has had terrible rewards for years, literally. Shadowland we already talked about, and so on and so forth. So you could have a second day of Shadowland where it gave you Norn Stones, all of the different types of Norn Stones, and perhaps it also gave you Uru and ISO 8. You could have another day of Shadowland that gave you comic cards and custom gear. You could have a fourth day of Shadowland that gave you uniform upgrade kits, and perhaps it gave you Chaos Norn Stones and Black Antimatter. You could have a fifth day that gave you all of the X-Men materials. You could have a sixth day that gave you tier 3 materials, and that one could be harder. That day could start at tier 2 with all of the enemies being either tier 2 or tier 3, and that would indicate to new players, hey, this is more difficult content. You probably shouldn't, test yourself on this, or you shouldn't be competing in this because you don't really need these materials. You don't need tier 3 materials as a brand new player. You need tier 2 materials because you're trying to tier 2 your first character, right? So you should do this other day of Shadowland. And I think it's a beautiful idea. I think it kind of encapsulates all of the problems and solutions that we experience in this game, or at least the ones that I hear. I mean, I could still be missing some of the big time issues that players have. And if I am, that's why I'm sharing it with you guys now here on YouTube, so that you guys can tell me down below in the comments. But I really do encourage you to let me know, because, on the one hand, I really want new content, and I know that the majority of you guys really want new game content. And personally, I want content that is challenging, but I also want content that is rewarding. And I think if I can only choose one, I would rather choose rewarding than challenging, simply because more of the players can take advantage of rewarding content, whereas only a small fraction of players can really take advantage of the super challenging content. And of course, if it's rewarding for me, it's probably rewarding for everyone. But if it's challenging for me, it's not even possible for other people. So there's obviously a gap there as well. So I wanted to give you guys my pitch for Shadowland reworks and Shadowland updates, and just generally the question of new game modes and how do we tackle the issue of increasing the daily playtime, increasing the rewards, but also making players feel as though they're doing something worthwhile. They're not just mindlessly grinding, or they're not having to put in 10 hours a day to play. And do we actually even want to care about all of those things, or should we just ignore one of them because it's too difficult, or because we don't need to satisfy those players at all? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.